When Ford said they were going to make a mass-produced electric vehicle, many thought it would be a Focus or even a Kuga. Few would have thought it would be a Mustang.
Yellow, soothing. Losing your 9-year no-claims bonus to a Pebble? Not so soothing. We don't do stress at the AA, we do car insurance. Relax. Yellow and black have got your back.
Before we go on, please do give this video a like, subscribe to the AA Ireland YouTube channel if you haven't already, and of course hit that bell icon to make sure you stay in touch with all of our latest video releases. Electric cars cost an awful lot to develop. Batteries remain very expensive, and even here in Ireland, where they have zero tailpipe emissions, you're still charged VRT on them, which makes them more expensive than in some other markets. However, we are lucky here in Ireland with the grants that we have towards electric vehicles, but of course they can't last forever. So someone in Ford with a calculator figured out they were going to have to charge an awful lot of money for their Ford EV. Now, they could of course call it a Vignale, but talk to anyone in Ford about Vignale and they break out into a cold sweat. However, luckily for them, they do have Mustang. Let's talk about the styling of the Mustang Mach-E. First of all, these rear LED lights are very striking, they're very impressive, but what is really striking for me is this clever piece of design where they have blacked out the roof and blacked out this section of the roof, which gives an overall impression of a more coupe-like car rather than the more SUV-like car it really is. This car is sitting on 19-inch alloy wheels, which are standard on the all-wheel drive version. They could be bigger. You do get 20-inch wheels on the GT version, which is at the very top of the range. However, you get 18-inch wheels on the rear-wheel drive entry version, but for me, I think I'd prefer 20s. Moving across to the front of the car, that's where there are more of the Mustang styling elements really on show, especially this large pony on the front grille. And of course, this grille is covered up because it's an EV. It is a decent sized car at 4.7 meters long. It is longer than a Skoda Enyaq, but it's also shorter and narrower than the Tesla Model Y. In terms of luggage capacity, there's a 400-litre boot space here in the Mach-E, which isn't by any means class leading. It's smaller than the likes of the ID4 or Tesla Model Y. However, it's enough, it's adequate enough, and of course there is a boot to show you up front. As is so often the case with EVs nowadays, there is a front boot, or frunk as they like to call it in the States. This one has 71 litres of space. You can expand that out to 100 litres if you pull out these dividers, and it's perfect for holding charging cables. Let's have a chat about the interior of the Mach-E. Now, I was skeptical when I saw the price of this thing that the interior was going to match, but you know what they have? They've done a really, really nice job. The quality of the plastics are first class. The steering wheel feels great. This Bang & Olufsen sound bar across the dashboard looks and of course sounds wonderful. But of course, like so many EVs, this one is dominated by a large screen. This is a 15-inch screen, and they've gone the way Tesla had done originally by going portrait. Tesla since have gone landscape, by the way, but it's a very intuitive system. It uses Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. There's a total lack of buttons. In fact, there's a lack of buttons throughout this car. However, there is still a traditional volume switch. But overall, this system is very intuitive to use. But what I will do is I'll show you something that's quite a nice feature in this car, which are the driving modes. There are 3 driving modes. There are active, which is normal driving mode if you like. It's a nice blend between sound and performance, so it's not a really punchy performance. Whisper is the second driving mode, which is very calm, very serene and totally quiet. And then of course there is Untamed, which pumps through a synthetic sound, a kind of a V8 sound through the cabin. Some people like that, some people don't. I don't mind it. It's a nice alternative to have, but it does give a much more punchy throttle response, and it does make this car feel quite a bit like a performance car. And of course, when you match that with all-wheel drive, as it does in this case, it makes for an entertaining drive. Any vehicle that calls itself a Mustang has quite a big heritage to live up to. So when Ford decided to make their EV a Mustang, it was a pretty ballsy move. And has it paid off? Well, do you know what? This is definitely one of the most interesting EVs I've ever driven. It's by no means the fastest. You know, Tesla's always claim that crown, and it's by no means perfect, but it is very, very good. dealing with the negatives, first of all, the ride is really skittish on this. It hops and leaps and jumps about roads, especially poor surfaces. But on the plus side, it is really quite fun to drive. There's tons of grip, especially obviously with this all-wheel drive version. And it just has that excellent Ford chassis, which we know and love from everything from the Fiesta upwards. So yeah, it's a really entertaining car to drive, and in terms of it being an EV, the range is really predictable. We are in the all-wheel drive version. It's got the 91 kilowatt hour battery, and full, it's been doing about 400 kilometers on a full charge. Now that's without trying, that's aircon on, just driving it as normal. And that's really the beauty of cars like this that have a very, very predictable battery range. You stop thinking about it. Certainly for me, I stopped thinking over 300 kilometers from a full charge. And you know, obviously if you want the longer range, you should go for the rear wheel drive version. But the thing about this car at the moment is you can't really afford to be picky. I was looking on Ford's website and they're quoting 32 weeks for the next delivery of one. So really, it's take which one you can get. If you want out and out performance, they do of course have the GT version, which is putting out, you know, 490 odd horsepower. So that's a really impressive looking vehicle. We haven't driven it yet, but fingers crossed we will at some stage soon. So look, in terms of driving, it is lovely. It's potent. You can push it on. It has a very dynamic feeling chassis, but then it will of course settle back into being a comfortable EV if you want it to be. I have spent an awful lot of time in this car this week, and the more that I've driven it, the more I've liked it. And I was quite skeptical at the start because for me price was an issue with this car. This one, as it sits here, all-wheel drive with the bigger battery, costs over €76,000, and at that price you're starting to stray well into Audi e-tron territory. However, having said that, this is by far one of the most entertaining EVs to drive on the Irish market at the moment. It's really fun to drive. Yes, that ride is a little bit skittish, but overall it's just a really interesting car. Now, if you can live with the price, and not many have, they've only sold, as we go to print on this, just under 40 of these. So the numbers are small and the waiting lists are long. If it was us, we would buy the rear wheel drive version with the bigger battery because that offers the best range. I'm not really sure you need all-wheel drive in a Mustang Mach-E. Rear wheel drive will do you fine. But overall, this is by far one of the most interesting EVs on the Irish market, and if you do have one of these in mind, then you will really enjoy your time with it.